I never believed adults could be monsters. At least not the quiet ones. When I was 13, my middle school hired a new cafeteria supervisor after winter break. Her name was Mrs. Drazic. Nobody knew where she came from. The teachers never mentioned her before that January morning. She just appeared. She was tall, unnaturally tall. Her shoulders were narrow, her arms long and stiff at her sides. Her gray hair was pulled into a tight bun that made her face look stretched. Her lips were thin, almost colorless. But it was her eyes that bothered me. They weren't angry. They weren't friendly. They were empty, like she was always calculating something. The first time I saw her was during lunch on a Tuesday. The cafeteria was loud as usual. Trays clattering, kids yelling, chairs scraping against tile. But when she walked in, something strange happened. The noise didn't stop, but it faded. Like everyone instinctively lowered their volume without realizing it. She stood near the trash cans, watching students throw away food. Not glancing, watching. Every time someone dumped a half-eaten sandwich or untouched vegetables into the bin, her jaw tightened slightly. My friend Eric nudged me. "Dude, she's creepy." I shrugged. Just another strict lunch lady. But she wasn't serving food. She wasn't cleaning. She wasn't helping. She was observing. That same week, something else started happening. Kids began disappearing from lunch. At first, it was small rumors. "Hey, where's Mason?" "Oh, he transferred." Transferred in the middle of the semester. Then it was Lily from my science class. Gone. Then Daniel. Gone. Each time, the explanation was the same. Family emergency. Moved away. No longer enrolled. It was too convenient. By the second week, I noticed something even stranger. Every kid who disappeared had one thing in common. They were the ones who wasted food, the ones who dumped entire trays untouched, the ones who laughed while throwing milk cartons into the trash. One afternoon, Eric dared me to test something. He left his entire lunch untouched, burger, fries, milk, and walked straight to the trash. Mrs. Drazic was standing there, watching. He dropped the tray into the bin and smirked. She didn't say anything, but she leaned slightly closer to him. Too close, and whispered something. I couldn't hear what she said, but Eric's smile vanished instantly. That was Thursday. On Friday, Eric didn't show up to school. I texted him after classes. No reply. By Monday, and the teacher announced he had moved out of state. No goodbye, no warning, just gone. That was the moment I started paying attention. The following Wednesday, I stayed behind after lunch on purpose. I pretended to tie my shoe near the vending machines while most students filed out. Mrs. Drazic remained near the trash bins, staring into them. When the cafeteria emptied completely, she walked over to the garbage cans and began removing trays. Not to clean them, to inspect them. She picked up half-eaten sandwiches, scraped off bites, examined leftovers. Then she placed certain trays aside on a separate cart. My heart was pounding. Why was she separating them? After a minute, she pushed the cart toward the kitchen doors. The double doors swung open, and I swear I heard something metallic echo from inside, like heavy equipment being moved. And I moved closer, quietly. The doors hadn't fully shut. Through the small window, I saw her roll the cart into the back kitchen area. The regular cooks weren't there. The lights were dimmer than usual, and against the far wall, there was a large industrial freezer I had never seen before. It wasn't part of the normal cafeteria layout. It looked older, rust along the edges. She opened it. Cold mist spilled out, and for a split second, I saw something inside. Something that wasn't food, something pale. Then the door slammed shut. I ran before she could see me. That night I had trouble sleeping. I kept thinking about Eric, about the freezer, about the disappearances. The next day during lunch, I forced myself to watch her again. She was scanning faces, not trays. Faces. and when her eyes landed on me, she held my gaze. Too long. Then she smiled slightly. That was the first time I felt real fear, because it felt like she knew I had seen something. That afternoon, I was called to the office. Not the principal's office, the cafeteria office, which I didn't even know existed. A secretary handed me a slip. Detention, after school, cafeteria. Reason, disruptive behavior during lunch. My stomach dropped. I hadn't done anything. At 3:15 p.m., I walked into the cafeteria. The lights were off except for the ones near the kitchen. There were 3 desks set up in a row. 2 other students were already there. A quiet boy from 8th grade, and a girl from my math class. Neither of them looked happy. At exactly 3:20, Mrs. Drazic stepped out of the kitchen. "You are here because you show disrespect," she said calmly. Her voice was low, controlled. "No talking. No leaving." She locked the main cafeteria doors. I heard the heavy metal click. Then she handed each of us a stack of blank-lined paper. "You will write," she said. "Why waste is wrong." I stared at her. "Write. For 2 hours." She walked back toward the kitchen entrance. But she didn't go inside. She stood there, watching. 30 minutes passed in silence. The 8th grader raised his hand. "I need to use the bathroom." She didn't answer immediately. Then she nodded. "Go." He stood up and walked toward the hallway exit. She unlocked it. He stepped out. The door shut. Locked again. We waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. He didn't come back. The girl across from me whispered, "That's weird." Before I could respond, we heard something. A loud metallic slam from inside the kitchen, followed by a dragging sound. Slow, heavy. The girl's breathing became shaky. "Do you hear that?" I nodded. Then came the smell, burning, like meat left too long in an oven. The girl covered her mouth. Mrs. Drazic walked slowly toward us. "You will continue writing," she said softly. "Waste is wrong." Her apron had a fresh dark stain across the front, and in her right hand, she was holding something metal. Long, heavy, not a kitchen utensil, something else. She smiled at me again, and this time I knew. We weren't in detention. We were being evaluated. The smell kept getting stronger. It wasn't just burnt food. It was thicker, heavier, like something organic had been left too long under heat. Mrs. Drazic walked back toward the kitchen doors, the metal object still hanging loosely from her hand. When the light hit it properly, I realized what it was. A meat cleaver, not brand new, not shiny, old, scratched, and stained near the handle. She pushed the kitchen doors open and disappeared inside. The doors swung slowly shut. The cafeteria fell into silence again. The girl across from me, her name was Ava, I remembered now, looked like she was about to cry. "Something's wrong," she whispered. I nodded. "We have to leave. The doors are locked. Then we find another way." We both glanced toward the hallway exit where the 8th grader had gone. Still no sign of him. Another metallic bang echoed from the kitchen, then something that made my blood run cold. A muffled thud, like something heavy hitting tile, followed by a short scraping noise. Ava stood up. "I'm not staying here." She walked toward the main cafeteria doors and pulled hard on the handles. They didn't move, chained from the outside. "Duh! How is that even possible?" she whispered. The chains weren't there during school hours. Someone had secured them after dismissal. My heart was racing now. "This was planned," I said quietly. Before we could move again, the kitchen doors burst open. Mrs. Drazic stepped out. Her apron was darker now, wet. She was breathing slightly heavier, but her face was calm, too calm. "Sit," she said. We both obeyed instantly. She placed the cleaver on one of the lunch tables behind her. Then she walked slowly around us, inspecting our papers. "Why is waste wrong?" she asked softly. Ava's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her pen. "It's disrespectful," she muttered. Mrs. Drazik leaned closer to her. "Disrespectful to who?" To the cooks." Mrs. Drazik smiled slightly. "Wrong." She turned to me. Why?" "It wastes resources," I said quickly. "People are starving." Her eyes narrowed. "Better." She picked up Ava's paper. Only 3 lines written. She exhaled slowly through her nose. "You do not take this seriously." Before Ava could respond, Mrs. Drazik grabbed her by the shoulder. "Hard!" Ava screamed. I stood up instinctively. "Stop!" Mrs. Drazik turned her head toward me without releasing Ava. "You want to trade places?" I froze. Ava's chair tipped over as Mrs. Drazik dragged her toward the kitchen. Ava clawed at the floor tiles, fingernails scraping. "Please, please don't!" The doors swung open, and this time I saw inside. Bright industrial lights, steel counters, and on the far table, a shape covered in plastic, human-shaped. The doors slammed shut behind them. Ava's screams echoed for about 5 seconds. Then they were cut off abruptly. The cafeteria went silent again. I was alone, completely alone. My breathing sounded too loud in the empty room. I couldn't think, couldn't move. Then I noticed something on the floor near the kitchen doors. Ava's glasses, bent, one lens cracked. That's when survival instinct finally kicked in. I ran, not to the chained front doors, not to the hallway, but toward the side corridor that led to the loading dock. I remembered food deliveries came through there. Maybe that exit wasn't locked. The corridor lights were dim, half of them flickering. The smell was stronger back here. The industrial hum of freezers vibrated through the walls. I reached the metal loading dock door and grabbed the handle. Locked. Of course. Panic started rising in my chest again. Then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Slow, measured, echoing against concrete. I turned around. She was standing at the end of the corridor, the cleaver gone. In her hand, now was something else. A long metal hook, the kind butchers use to move heavy cuts of meat. "You are curious, boy," she said calmly. I backed up until my shoulders hit the cold metal door. "You saw freezer." It wasn't a question. "You look inside when you think I not see." My mouth went dry. "I didn't." She tilted her head slightly. "You waste time. You waste food. You waste life." She stepped closer, the hook scraping lightly against the wall as she walked. Nothing must be wasted. That's when I understood. The missing kids, the freezer, the smell, the ovens. This wasn't punishment, it was recycling. She was turning students into food, serving them back the burger patties, the mystery meat, the chili days. My stomach twisted violently. "You are smart," she continued. "Smart ones are useful." She lunged. I barely dodged as the hook slammed into the door behind me with a deafening clang. I ran past her, back toward the cafeteria. She grabbed at my hoodie but only caught fabric. I sprinted through the kitchen doors this time instead of avoiding them, and what I saw inside will never leave my head. Steel tables covered in plastic sheets, knives arranged neatly, industrial grinders, and against the back wall, the freezer, its door slightly open, cold mist spilling out. Inside, stacked shapes wrapped in clear plastic, small, too small to be adults. A hand pressed against the inside of the frost-covered wall, frozen mid-reach. I stumbled backward. She was coming. Her footsteps fast now, no longer calm. I looked around desperately for something, anything, to defend myself. My eyes landed on the oven controls, industrial temperature dials glowing orange. An idea formed. Insane, but the only one I had. as she burst into the kitchen. I grabbed a metal tray and hurled it at her face. It hit hard enough to stagger her. Not enough to stop her, but enough. I ran to the freezer, pulled the door open wider. Cold air blasted into my lungs. I grabbed one of the wrapped bodies and shoved it into her path as she charged. She tripped, fell hard. The hook clattered across the tile. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted for the back prep area where I had seen the gas lines connected to the ovens. If I couldn't escape, I could destroy everything. She was getting back up, rage replacing calm in her eyes. "You ungrateful child," she hissed. I grabbed the emergency gas valve and twisted it, hard. The smell of gas filled the air almost instantly. She realized what I was doing. Her expression changed. Not fear, fury. She lunged at me, and just as her fingers wrapped around my throat. The kitchen lights flickered violently. Sparks erupted from one of the ovens, and everything went white. The last thing I remember before the explosion was her hand tightening around my throat. Her fingers were cold, stronger than they looked. Then, a flash, a deafening blast, and silence. When I woke up, everything was white. White ceiling, white walls, white noise ringing in my ears. It took a few seconds before I realized I was in a hospital. My throat felt raw. My head throbbed. There was a bandage wrapped around my arm. A nurse noticed my eyes open and quickly called someone. Moments later, my parents rushed into the room. My mom was crying. My dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. They told me there had been a gas leak accident in the school cafeteria, an explosion, minor structural damage. I was found unconscious near the kitchen. They said it was a miracle I survived. I immediately asked about Ava, about the 8th grader, about Mrs. Drazik. My parents exchanged a strange look. There were no other students in the cafeteria, my dad said slowly. And there is no employee named Drazik, my mom added. I stared at them. What are you talking about? The police checked the records, my dad interrupted gently. No one by that name was ever employed there. That made no sense. I had seen her every day for weeks. So had everyone else. Or had they? A detective came later that evening. When he asked me to explain everything, I told him about the disappearances, the freezer, the bodies, the ovens, the hook, the cleaver, the smell. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sighed. The cafeteria kitchen was heavily damaged in the blast, he said. But there were no bodies found. No freezers other than the standard unit. No chains on the doors. I felt my stomach drop. That's impossible. He studied me carefully. You suffered a concussion. Severe smoke inhalation. Trauma can distort memory. Distort memory. That's what they called it. Over the next few days, I tried contacting Eric. His number was disconnected. I searched his name online. Nothing. No transfer records. No new social media. It was like he never existed. I went back to school 2 weeks later. The cafeteria had been repaired. Fresh paint. The new equipment. New staff. No one talked about the explosion. When I asked about Ava, my math teacher frowned. There's no student by that name in your class. I checked the attendance sheet. Her name wasn't there. I checked old group projects. No trace. Locker numbers had shifted. The 8th grader. No one remembered him either. It was like reality had been edited, like someone erased them, or maybe they had never been there to begin with. For a while, I started doubting myself. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe the concussion scrambled my brain. Maybe there really was no Mrs. Drazik. But then something happened 3 months later. It was a Friday. Pizza day. I was standing in the lunch line when I smelled it again. That same thick metallic scent. Burnt meat. My heart began pounding. I looked toward the serving counter. The new lunch lady was different. Shorter, younger, normal, but behind her, standing near the trash bins, was a tall silhouette, watching. Gray hair tied tightly back, thin lips, empty eyes. She wasn't wearing an apron. She wasn't holding anything. She was just standing there, staring directly at me. No one else seemed to notice her. A kid bumped into me from behind. When I looked back, she was gone. I dropped my tray and ran to the principal's office. I demanded they check the cameras. They reluctantly reviewed the footage from the cafeteria. On the screen, students moved normally. The lunch staff worked, trash bins filled, but there was no tall woman, no gray hair, no shadow near the wall, just empty space. I started therapy shortly after that. The official explanation became survivors' trauma hallucinations. My parents moved us to another district the following year. New school, new building, new cafeteria. For a while things were normal. I forced myself to forget. Years passed. High school, graduation, college. I avoided cafeterias whenever possible. Buffets made me sick. The smell of overcooked meat triggered panic attacks. I tried convincing myself it was over, that whatever happened died in that explosion, until last year. I was driving home from work, late one night. I took a shortcut through an industrial area. As I passed an old warehouse, I noticed something strange. A banner hanging outside. Community Food Processing Facility. The parking lot was empty except for one delivery truck, but the lights inside were on, bright, industrial. And through the side window, I saw stainless steel tables, large freezer units, and a familiar tall silhouette moving slowly between them. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I told myself to keep driving, to forget it. But I couldn't. I parked across the street, got out, and slowly approached the building. The side door wasn't fully closed, just slightly open. From inside I heard something metallic scrape, and a low, calm voice. "You do not waste." My blood ran cold. I stepped closer to the gap in the door and looked inside. There she was, older but unmistakable, hair still tight, back still straight, eyes still empty. She was standing beside a steel table, and on that table was a school cafeteria tray with a half-eaten slice of pizza. She slowly picked it up, examined it, then looked directly toward the door, toward me, and her lips curled slightly, not into a smile, into recognition. She stepped forward. The overhead light flickered. I stumbled backward, and when I looked again, the room was empty. No tables, no freezer, no silhouette, just a dark, abandoned warehouse. The banner outside was gone. The windows were covered in dust, like the building hadn't been used in years. I got back in my car and drove home. I didn't tell anyone, because I already know what they'll say. Trauma, hallucination, stress. But here's what I know for sure. Every city has schools. Every school has cafeterias. And every cafeteria throws away food. And somewhere, there's someone watching the trash bins, making sure nothing goes to waste.